put this all together. So, Mr. Harrell, you made the comment that there's really, and Mr. Witta followed up on it, that there's really no American mining company, is there?
Most of the major mining companies are multinational global mining companies.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that?
How you make these projects pencil out, and frankly, like doing business in the U.S. isn't as appealing as it is in other places.
Yeah, you got to run the table on all the rest of your assets before you get the one that comes through in the United States.
We're going to do the harder stuff.
Yeah. So, once again, I should have had an empty chair up here for the Democrat. It's not here, but Mr. Cabrera, they keep bringing up the mining law of 1872. What is it about that mining law of 1872 that they're after?
First of all, that law and how it's described is mischaracterized. That law has actually been amended dozens of times. So just because something is old doesn't mean that it is outdated. That's the first issue. The second issue is that they're constantly trying to completely change the rules of engagement for such an important industry in our country. And so that law is being attacked for its age and mischaracterized as not being modern enough simply because they don't like the outcomes of that law. And the outcomes are that mining companies are able to leverage federal lands in order to get mineral supplies. If we couple that law as it is today with the NEPA reforms that you all just passed, thank you, plus permitting reform from H.R. 1, we could actually make a go of it.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to get a kind of a feel for the amount of money that's with these companies. So what's the average salary for one of these mining companies?
An average worker in a mining company are graduates from the University of Arizona, folks with mining engineering or economic geology backgrounds, also mechanical engineers and others. Mining industries employ lots of professionals. The average salary that we calculate is about $80,000 a year.
$80,000. I sure could use $80,000. How about you guys? You also brought up the aspect of how do we get this reform back? And it's been brought up by a number of people. And in Arizona, it's perfectly suited for this. We just need a chief executive who's got some cojones. So what is that? It's divesting the federal government of its assets back to the state. And I'm glad I got Tim sitting over here because he's one of our finest here in Arizona. But the equal footing clause plays a big part in Arizona. So let's go through this. So the first time Arizona puts up for their statehood, they were rejected by Taft. Taft is not your ordinary president. Taft is the only president to go on to serve in the Supreme Court. The only. So what does he do? He comes back to Arizona and he says, okay, what you're going to do is we're going to force you to take the federal doctrine, federal lands. And what we're going to do there is we're going to use the multiple use doctrine so that you never have to worry about that. He forms contract. He forms a contract with the state of Arizona. Now, why is that important? Because it would sure be nice to have an executive, a governor, that challenges that doctrine. Say, wait, whoa. Federal government ain't last in line. It's the state of Arizona. The more we can devolve back to the states, the better. Mike hit the nail on the head. What is going on there is a sewer of despair. We want to get as little as we can to the federal government. Remember what our framers said. We give limited powers to the federal government. The rest is reserved for the people in the state. We got this backwards. We got this really backwards. I hope you're as ticked off as I am, especially after my vice chair's comments. I think that's very, very apropos about that. I'm going to end with one more thing. Uranium. So now you have a group of people that are trying to withdraw this area. up in northern Arizona from uranium. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Cabrera. Would it be better to take out the uranium because it's a depression? It gets water. Water seeps there. Air hits there. Wouldn't it be better to take those out and put your sedimentary rock in there so that you get permeation of water from the subsurface or from the surface to the subsurface to refill some of those aquifers? Doesn't that seem a little bit more apropos?
It is accurate that removing uranium from the subsurface will leave less mass that can interact with groundwater and create naturally occurring uranium concentrations in groundwater. We have naturally occurring uranium concentrations in groundwater in various places across our state. And it is accurate that removing that source of uranium will allow less interaction between the groundwater and the uranium.
Yeah. So, and I guess the next part I want to say is, if we're going to compact or to these modular nuclear processes, pretty safe, aren't they?
I am not an expert in nuclear power, but what I do know is in the United States we have had no major incidents at nuclear facilities in multiple decades. And when you look at the trade-offs of other traditional power sources, nuclear power is economic, it's clean, and in the United States we know how to do it safely.
And last point. Earlier this year, we were about a minute away from having a rolling blackout in the United States. Is that true?
Sir, I'm not aware of that, but I would not be surprised.
Yeah. Well, a part of this problem is temporary or intermittent type access to fuel, and then basal power. What's the difference? When the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you don't watch your television. And remember Donald Trump saying that? Well, basal power, when you flip the switch, it's always on. 24/7, 365. So if you're utilizing all these renewables, and God, I'll tell you right now, I'm for all the above, because we don't need less energy, we need more energy, right? So I'm just taken back by that. I'm going to end with a question for every single one of you. What was the question that you most wanted to answer, and what's its answer? We'll start with you, Mr. Carrera.
The question that I most wanted to answer is, what are some simple things that we can do to accelerate permitting at the federal level? And the answer to that question is realize that 95% of the total elapsed time for any administrative process is simply waiting. In other words, there is no connection between quality or protection and time. Time is simply a waste. Private sector has realized that. If we just apply private sector streamlining techniques to federal permitting processes, we could accelerate federal permits by 90% as we did in the state of Arizona.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, same question.
The question that I hoped would be asked is, Jim, how do we hold federal agencies accountable? And so my response would be that when you have an opponent that is out to work against you, what do you do? And there you learn the rules that they're playing by. And the rules that the federal agencies have to abide by are the missions of the individual agencies: Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, etc. So we learn what the rules are that those agencies have to go by, the statutes, and then we apply those statutes to the bureaucrats. Now, there's two levels of bureaucrats. There's appointees that come in with the administration, and then there's career bureaucrats that come in later. And so during the administrative processes, I believe it was Congressman Crane alluded to the comment period. No, it actually was your vice chair, alluded to the comment period. And during the comment period, that's Administrative Procedures Act That's under the Administrative Procedures Act. That's where you address the agencies, and you do it technically, strategically, and then the last thing of my response is this: is bureaucrats exist on anonymity. That's how they get away with what they're doing. And so when we hold agencies accountable to their mission in life that was delegated by the Congress, and we hold bureaucrats accountable to what they're supposed to be doing and put pressure on them legitimately with dignity and respect, it works great. Thanks,
Same
Mr.
question.
Chair.
I believe that the question that needs that I would like to have been asked is how do we shift America's dependence from foreign adversaries to the United States? And I think what the answer would be is that our federal government, U.S. Congress, taking the lead in its oversight role, is to be very deliberate. China didn't just get here by accident. China was very deliberate in its actions. They've repeated over and over again their goals. They want to be in control of our global supply chains so that they can exert power over us. And not over us, but all of their adversaries, whether it's in the the Pacific with regard to Taiwan and a host of other issues. They want to be able to control our supply chain so that we have to bow down at some point to their demands. And they're utilizing every mechanism at their disposal. They have a whole government approach to the way they do things, and they have a whole government approach to the way they're trying to infiltrate our democracy, not just at the federal level, but also at the state and local level.
Mr. Chairman, we tiptoed around it a little bit today, but we can't spend our way out of this problem. In the end, we need a fundamental change the paradigm on how we permit things in this country. If you believe that and I do, that we're going to have to double our grid in the next 30 years, and like you, I think that means more wind, more solar, more advanced nuclear, more geothermal, more CCUS, more gas production. We're going to have to build a lot of things in this country, both generation and storage and grid infrastructure and manufacturing tied to it. If you just back that out a little bit, and I'll give you some stats to underscore this, so some modeling will say that means over that time period, 1,400 new projects a year would need to be permitted. That's 3 projects a day. There's no money that we can throw at the bureaucracy that's going to get them approving 3 projects a day. We have to do something fundamentally different to take our own economic competitiveness in our own hands.
So you're actually telling me government's not the answer?
Government's not the answer. No.
Craig?
Well, as you know, Congressman Gosar, rare earth elements have been a passion of mine for the last 20 years. It's a very easy solution, but it's mixed up in a federal matrix. The other 2 elements I spoke about today, tellurium, this is a byproduct of porphyry copper deposits. Rio Tinto's the only one recovering it right now. They only spent $2.9 million on the addition to their loop. That's peanuts. Antimony? The antimony, there's such wonderful deposits up through Idaho. This is another real low-hanging fruit. And right now, most of antimony is either being refined in China or in Oman. SPMP in Oman is one of the other companies that's doing it. Even if it's through offtake agreements from existing mines, because we just can't get refineries open quick enough. I could expand. My property is over 40 acres, and right now we're utilizing 10 acres for lithium. I could easily put in tellurium. We made this off of copper slimes. I could easily put in antimony and rare earths, all on the property that I have right now under the permit that I have now through the EPA. There's just, it isn't like if you build it, they will come. I built it. The administration changed. I lost 75% of my customers.
Yep.
That's reality. That's where the rubber hits the road. 75% of my clients on public land were completely wiped out when this administration took charge. It's amazing that I can keep. I've never laid off an employee. We have our full staff. As to your question earlier, my employees start out at $88,000 a year. I try and make it to where a single wage earner can support their family. Their kids aren't being raised by daycare. They're being raised by the mother or the father, a parent. And we're just in this tailspin. If you can't get permits, you really shouldn't open a refinery because you don't have product.
Yeah. Well, and that goes, Craig, for if you've got a semiconductor plant, you better have the product to actually make semiconductors.
Exactly.
I don't care how big it is. It's not going to make any more if you don't have any product.
And as mentioned earlier, we have plenty of germanium here. I know of a property out in Darwin, California that could do our whole germanium supply. We've got the Gordonville mine in Middle Tennessee that's just could take over all the gallium needs. And actually, when you get back to the question earlier on recycling the glass on solar panels, you can make the unicorn, the 5 or 6, 9 purity silica, to be put back into the supply chain. There's so many things to do. It's hard to say where we begin because we've been behind the 8 ball for so many years. We're already so many layers down in that onion.
It also makes you speculate.
Well,
when you had somebody's telling you, yes, you can, how do we help you? And then you go, no, you can't. You're not going to have anybody.
Well, it's almost like they're trying to pick up the dog turd from the clean end. There is no clean end. Pick it up.
Exactly right. No, I hear you loud and clear. One person sitting in the audience I want to just actually say, Dave, would you stand up, Rickens? Yeah. Let me ask you a question. How much money has Resolution Copper put into mitigation in regards to that mine site? Folks, I would tell you, this is the mine that is ready to take off.
Yes.
We got to go visit. We need to go ask. We need to go demand. We need to go get this thing off the ground. You can see all the things they've done. It's amazing what they've done. Strictly unbelievable. The water's cleaner than they get it. This is amazing technology. So if I had one ask of you, let's get out to Resolution Copper. Let's get that over the hurdle. And then we'll get to the next project. And then we'll get the next project. And we'll get the next project. And we'll get the next project. You got my word. I'll be happily here answering questions. And I'll be that dog on a bone. I will be that dog on the bone. I want to thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may also have some additional questions for the witnesses. And we'll ask you to respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, the members of the committee must submit questions to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, July 26. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. I'd also like to thank